Okay, good evening, everybody. We are live tonight. We have on the Hangout myself, Terry Davis. Um, we also have Angela Self and Ryan Gilbreth. So we've been reading this book about leadership. It's called the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. And we, excuse me, we have read the first three laws, well, the first three chapters, and Noel. We wanted to talk to you guys about some of the information, I guess is what I'm gonna call it, that we have gotten. I think, um, I mean, so far, actually, let me say so far. What have you thought about the book so far, Angela?
It definitely makes me put a lot of things into perspective. So I think that's the biggest thing, and I definitely like the recap at the end of each law because it kind of has you do an activity, and I like that because it kind of makes you jog your memory of what you just read.
Right. So what have you thought so far, Ryan, while reading?
Well, while reading, I will say with chapter 1, I love how...
I don't know if Ryan can hear us.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I love how in chapter 1 where it talks about the law of the lid, I love how it first shows the importance of leadership. Like, you can only go so far in your career or in your business if you so if your leadership is at a 1, then your effectiveness is only going to go a certain level. So I love how the book starts off like that.
Can you hear him?
Yes.
You hear me?
I can't hear anything.
I can hear him. I can hear you. I don't know what's going on. I almost want to ask somebody else. Can they hear you?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Let me see. About the message then. Do you have it on mute, Angela?
I don't know. No?
Yep.
I clicked on him and it doesn't have it on mute.
I'm not on mute. That's weird.
Well, yeah, like Ryan just said, chapter 1 is called the Law of the Lid. And like he said, that basically talks about, your effectiveness. Well, talks about being a leader, and it kind of breaks down, it's more to it than just the basics of being able to start something up. That does not make you an effective leader. I guess, basically the story behind the Law of the Lid, it dealt with the McDonald brothers. I don't know if you guys know, but those are the brothers that actually, I guess in a way, started McDonald's. But the thing about it was they were successful starting up like one business. When they tried to make it a chain, they didn't have success. And that's a key thing with leadership. You have to, let's say just for me, for instance, using It Works. Let's say I'm great at, okay, we're going to talk about charting because I'm good at charting. I'm good at remembering who's where, knowing people's volume, and just remembering. And let's say, we have another leader in our downline that's really good at training and training people, let's say, how to blitz. Let's say Khaleesi is good at training people how to blitz, motivating people. That's okay. For me, it would be to a disadvantage for the whole entire team if I didn't let her teach that, because that is her gift. So basically, in the first chapter, we learned how those brothers were really good at starting their own business. They were profitable, but then when it was time to expand and do a lot more, they weren't successful with that. So you have to let people do what they're good at. And it's okay if you're not good at everything. That's when you bring in other people that are good at those things while you try to, hone those skills. But you still want to let other people be, in what you're doing and not just try to like have all the tasks to yourself. What else did you get from that chapter, Ryan?
I think from that chapter, it was very interesting. Again, a story about the McDonald brothers. Like you saw in the beginning, they had such a great idea. They had such a great idea. They didn't necessarily have a vision. to what McDonald's could be. They just had a great idea at the time. They thought it would go well. But then when Ray Kroc came in, his leadership, I mean, was much higher than McDonald's brothers, and he not only took that business from what it was, but he also saw a vision and that he had for the business, and he inspired others to follow him on that vision. So not only that, but you also hear a lot of great stories about the sports coach and the law of the lid, and just how their leadership skills were measured against other leaders, and even people who were in an actual director I'm sorry, not director, but who was the coach for a famous team. They're supposedly supposed to be the leader of the team. They were not the leader. Their assistant coach was the leader because his leadership lid was much higher than his. So I thought that was very interesting.
What about you, Angela? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I just heard you said. But what was the question?
What was your recap from chapter 1 or law 1, law of the lid?
Well, I think the biggest thing was the evaluating yourself, on the leadership scale, and then having people either on your team, your supervisors and so forth, evaluate you on people skills, planning and strategic thinking, vision and results. Because I was pretty in line with what people said, but a lot of times people are not in line. And so that was kind of, Sebastian, stop.
I think I want to post those questions, also that evaluation, so everybody can do a self-evaluation, and then so you can also ask other people, because like you said, it's important to know what other people think of your skills, because, and at the same time, if you're wanting to be a leader, you have to be able to take constructive criticism. So when you ask somebody, he said in this book, it was like, ask others to rate your leadership. Talk to your boss, your spouse, 2 colleagues at your own level, 3 people that you lead, and ask them about your leadership. And you want to rate everybody on a scale of 1 to 10, and it says you want them to rate you in people skills. Noelle just put her head right in the light. People skills, planning and strategic thinking, and vision and results. So those are the 4 things I'm going to post it. I'll probably post it in Diamonds in the Rough, that I want everybody to look at. I want you to rate yourself, what you think, and then I want you to ask maybe your enroller, some of your sidelines. You can go to work, ask your boss, you can ask your spouse, but then you average everybody's answers together, and it gives you a better idea of where you really stand, for you to see if you were in line with what they thought, or maybe you see yourself at a different level from everybody else. But that's basically what I got out of chapter 1. Chapter 2, the law of influence, I feel like that is like a key defining law. Like, everybody needs to be reading this, because many times when you think about leadership, you're wondering, how am I going to be an effective leader? How are people going to listen to me? What's going on? This second chapter talked about that in great detail. And basically, like he said, he was like, I highlighted something on the very first page. It says, if you don't have influence, you will never lead others. And when you think about it, it's so true. You have to be able to influence others for them to follow you. Thus, they're following your leader. So your influence is very key. Before I go on another part, I know I want to talk about the 5 myths briefly, and then I want to talk about the points that make it what you have to look at in yourself about being a leader. But before that, what did you kind of think about this chapter, Ryan, since Angela can't hear you?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think what really sums it up for me is that influence must be earned. I think that's the most powerful lesson from this chapter, is that you have to earn influence. Influence isn't given. Just because you have a title doesn't mean that people are going to follow you. If you you have to work hard at influence. I mean, I know for me right now, I'm still, I'm still starting out, but when I read this, it really challenged me to say that, just because just because I'm doing this or I'm doing that, I still have to work hard for it. I have to work harder than anyone else in order to earn influence. It's not easy, and I think that's the biggest lesson that I learned from chapter 2.
Okay, what are your thoughts, Angela?
Please be quiet. I thought this one was a great chapter because I have been in management, my whole adult working life. And so I've seen this, several times in the workplace where people are placed in those management positions, but they're not leaders. And they normally fail. Sometimes they can coast, but for the most part, they end up failing. And it's hard to teach someone how to be a leader because they're not putting in the effort. Now I would know. I would go back and say, oh, you need to be either reading books, educating yourself on leadership, or learning from leaders how to be a leader, because just being given the title that's really nothing. I mean, people almost don't respect you if you just have the title. But if they know that you know what you're doing and you're actually a good leader, it changes everything. So I like that part of it, which you said you were going to go over the 5 myths. So
Right. I just kind of wanted to, because I'm looking at the clock, because I'm trying to make sure we're off in time for everybody to catch the corporate call that's about the essential oils that I need to be paying attention to. But so like briefly, the 5 myths. One myth that Angela just said, the management myth. Being a manager and being a leader is 2 separate things. You have to be able to influence people. It's like you can have a boss that tells you do this, this, and this, and everybody might just look at that boss and not ever do it. Then all of a sudden, one of the other co-workers comes in and is like, come on, guys, let's do all this, and everybody does it. That's because that co-worker is the one who has the leadership. The boss just has the title as supervisor, but nobody respects that, or, they're not really following them. That could be for various reasons, but that's one of that's the number one, well, not the number one, but that was myth number 1, that, the management myth. Number 2 was the entrepreneur myth. And that's a great one for especially our business. Just because you're an entrepreneur doesn't mean you're a leader. Just because you were able to come up with a great idea and you know what you want to do, you have a vision, that still doesn't mean you can lead people. That doesn't mean you have any influence yet. But so all of us, so we can even say for ourselves in our business, looking on our team, you can look, just everybody on our team is in business. They're an entrepreneur. But does everybody possess adequate leadership skills? I can tell you the answer right now is no. That's not meaning you can't, because everybody does possess the ability to be a leader, but those have to be learned, and that comes with experience. And number 3, the knowledge myth. Just because you know everything doesn't make you a leader, and I completely understand that. You could have the whole dictionary memorized, but what does that mean? Nothing. You're just, well educated on a topic, which education is important in leadership, but just because the person who knows everything doesn't mean they're going to be an effective leader. That's kind of like when I think about medical school. I don't know if you guys know, but when you go to medical school, you can't just have straight A's. You can't. That's not what gets you into medical school. They want to make sure these people are social. They want to make sure they've, been in the different groups in the communities, been with other people, been around. They want to make sure you have other skill sets, not just smart. And that's the same, because as a doctor, you're definitely a leader. So that's the same type of thing that's going on here with being smart. Number 4 is the pioneer myth. Let me double check this one. Okay, the pioneer myth means just because you're in the front of everybody sees you, that doesn't mean you're a leader. You could be in front of everybody, and then though well, they gave the analogy about the man that climbed Mount Everest. Get out of that way. But you know, just because he was in front and he led everybody to Mount Everest, he wasn't really the one leading the excursion. So, you know, just because a person is the one that's well recognized doesn't mean they were the actual leader and they were the one that was created the vision and did everything else. And the last one is the position myth. Just like Angela already touched on, you know, just because you're the supervisor does not mean you're a leader. The same with our team. That especially for that group that we have right now, for everybody pushing Ruby, or everybody is no excuses. Everybody in that group is trying to develop themselves to be a leader because it takes leadership skills to be able to move forward and promote in our business. So with that being said, just because somebody is a certain rank does not mean that person is your leader. You can go to somebody else that has better influence, that makes more sense, that relates to you, that's there for you. That's what makes somebody a leader. Your rank has nothing to do with your influence on people. Do you have anything you want to touch on about that, Ryan?
I think there was one. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Let me, yeah, there was one part I wanted to touch on. Says, he who thinks he leads but has no followers is only taking a walk.
What?
And I thought that was, yeah, I mean, I thought I hit the nail on the head right there. I mean, you can lead, but if you look behind, you have no followers following you, then honestly, you're just taking just a stroll. You're taking a walk.
Right. That's definitely true. To be a leader and have an influence, you have to have people following you. It's inevitable. What about you, Angela? Anything about those 5 myths?
Yeah, I definitely I think it was the pioneer myth. A lot of leadership books or a lot of books that I've read always says, you know, the one in front of the room or the one that's given the presentation, they're normally the leader or the highest, you know, money earner. They may be the highest money earner, but they're not necessarily the leader. And now that makes total sense. So that one definitely, I mean, I already knew about a couple of the other ones. And the knowledge myth, too, that was pretty enlightening when you think about, because one of the examples they used was, you know, going to a college campus and you've got these researchers and professors who are, you know, so smart that it's like off the scale, but their leadership skills could be just the opposite, completely none, zero. So necessarily being the smartest isn't going to be the leader. And was
Right.
this
So I
chapter
think
talking about Mother Teresa, or was that the next chapter?
that was this one in the beginning. They talked about Mother Teresa.
Right. So one of the things that they talked about with her was that she clearly had influence because, you know, she wasn't the loudest, the biggest, the strongest, or any of those things, but she had the influence. So, it just talks about that and kind of makes a point of all of the myths, because if you just thought the myths were true, then she wouldn't have been a leader based on those.
Right. And I'm just going to briefly go over what makes a leader, and we can kind of go back over these more tomorrow during our training, because I have some stuff that I want to talk about that kind of gears around this. But it said leadership is character. That means who you are. Leadership is relationships, who you know. Leadership is knowledge, what they know. Leadership is intuition, what do you feel? Leadership is experience, where you've been. And leadership is past success, what you've done, and its ability, what can you do. So people look at all these different factors when they gauge somebody's leadership capability. So we'll go in more depth about those tomorrow, but I definitely will probably post them too, so you can kind of rate yourself and see, where you think you're at. But the last one that we talked about, we're going to talk about briefly, is the law of the process. And for me, I feel like anybody right now that is reading this book, not that you have to be on chapter 3, but if you've taken the initiative out to read this, you are performing law of the process. That he basically was saying it's going to take a lifelong I guess process to become an excellent leader. Leaders aren't, what did he say? Leaders aren't developed overnight. They're developed, I don't know if he said over, okay.
He said over a lifetime, and that really resonated with me because, especially when using the money with the stock market and talking about, you can't expect a return on your investment tomorrow or next week or even next month or even next year. If you really want a long-term growth, then you have to be a lifelong investor. So same thing goes for your leadership skills. So I really like that analogy that he used.
Right. And I think a lot of this is going to be talked about tomorrow as well. I'm not going to really say too much. What was your, I guess, key point coming out of this for you, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, number 3, for me, it really preaches on the daily, I would say really just daily practice. Just really become a lifelong learner. I think, again, your leadership isn't developed overnight. I mean, if you read John Maxwell when he was teaching a class and he talked to a student, he told the student at 52 he had just hit, I think, maybe like a small peak in his leadership development. And I think it was a great analogy when he talked about how, and how boxing is a great example of daily practice to become a leader. And one of the sayings he said, one of the sayings he put in his book was, champions don't become champions in the ring. They are merely recognized there. And it says leadership is about daily preparation. You can map out a fight plan or life plan, but when the action starts, you're down to your reflexes. That's where your road work shows. If you cheated that in the dark of morning, you getting found out now under the bright lights.
Right. Really agree. It's definitely, you got to put in the work. So if I ask you if you're blitzing, oh yeah, I go out and I blitz 10 people a day, and then all of a sudden, when I ask you to talk about blitzing or teach or train on it, you're going to not know what to say because you're not really doing it. You're not living it. You're just, you lied, which, it'll come out. That's the same with different stuff when we go to train. So it can still be seen, with our business in general, the more you fail, the more you succeed. So it's kind of people, like you say, because eventually you'll learn what not to say anymore. You might have tried something before, you thought it was a good idea, and it turned out that it wasn't. But like you said, the process, you have to work every single day to be a leader. It doesn't just come. It doesn't happen just because you hit a rank. That doesn't make you a leader. It's like an everyday devotion to yourself. And like he said, if you're trying to be a leader, you need to be reading a new book every single month. Leaders are readers, and that's so true because it's about knowledge. You learn new things. You hear about other people's past experiences, and I just really think it's really key. You taking time to develop those skills to want to be a better leader. I think that's about all that I really have to kind of just break down what those chapters were about, so we can all get on this call. But do you guys have anything you want to say?
Be uncomfortable.
I mean, if you are on our team and you're in the no excuses group, you should be reading this book. There should be no excuse. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
And what were you saying, Ryan?
No, I was just saying, I think one of the things I'm practicing for myself is to be uncomfortable. There are some things such as, go on a call with a potential loyal customer or even setting a rap party. It's uncomfortable for me to do because it's a little nerve-wracking, but at the same time, I'm doing it because I'm pushing myself to get out of my comfort zone. And I think that's one of the daily practices is you have to practice to get yourself out of your comfort zone. Yep.
Right. That's true. So I guess we'll talk tomorrow during our training at 8 p.m. Central Time. But until then, I will talk to you guys later.